So students, in the previous video we were discussing about the evolution of animal kingdom. In animal kingdom we have classified, animal kingdom, the kingdom Animalia into three groups. Actually it was invertebrate and chordates. Invertebrates which do not have any endoskeleton, and the chordates which have endoskeleton, and the chordates again classified into two categories, protochordates and vertebrates. So we were studying the slow progress from invertebrates to vertebrates, and in that series we have seen in the previous video the development of porifera into Coelenterata, Coelenterata into helminthes, helminthes evolved into Annelida, Annelida led to Arthropoda, Arthropoda to Mollusca, and Mollusca to Echinodermata. Then Echinodermata slowly developed into the protochordates. In protochordates we had the groups called Urochordata, then Cephalochordata, and then Hemichordata. And this is the slow progress we are going to study. The Hemichordata then led to the development of fishes, and then fishes evolved into amphibians, amphibians into reptiles, and reptiles developed into both the birds and the mammals. So this is the total evolution of animal kingdom that we were going to study. In the previous video I have discussed up to from porifera to arthropoda, the slow progression from cellular level of organization to tissue level of organization. Even in tissue level it was developing into diploblastic to triploblastic, and then the tissues developed into organs because of development of a true coelom, and then development of exoskeleton in arthropoda, and the legs with joints, That was what we discussed in the previous video. Today we will begin from this where we left in the previous video. That is the development of arthropoda into mollusca. Mollusca is not a very, we can say, much developed kind of organisms. We will see how arthropoda led to mollusca, mollusca to Echinodermata, then how Echinodermata led to the development of protochordata, and how protochordata developed into the vertebrates. That will be our aim in this video, to study the slow progression in the process of evolution in the animal kingdom. I hope you have got the idea that we left at arthropoda in the previous video, and we'll begin the slow progression and development and completion of the last group, the most well developed animal in this living world, that is mammals, that we will see today in this video. So as discussed earlier, arthropoda was the first, we are talking about invertebrata. Invertebrata means there is no endoskeleton inside the body. Nothing, no hard structure, they are soft bodied animals. And arthropoda was the first invertebrate in which the skeleton appeared, but it appeared as exoskeleton, that is outside the body, Then in mollusca, if you see, mollusca is the group which is the first group we showed the development of muscles, And you can clearly see that in this group, for the first time the body got differentiated into what is actually called as the head of course, which contained the brain and the spinal cord and the nerve cords, which led to the control of different body parts. The second, you can call it a body or viscera. Viscera is the general body parts. And the third one, that is a very special development of mollusca, is a muscular flat feet. In the previous group, arthropoda, we have seen the development of legs, but the legs were in no way were muscular at all. Well, the legs had joints, the movement was faster, but that is what I am saying. It's a poor development because you can see the body had a head and then the actual body part, and at the bottom of the body part, here you will find the heads and the other sense organs, the brain develop, but there is a flat feet at the bottom, and because of this nature, the flat feet, the large surface area is in touch with the ground, and because of that huge friction is applied, and so due to the flat muscular heavy feet, the movement is very slow in these organisms. So movement slow in the sense there are two negative aspects to that. The animals need faster movement, needs much more flexibility in their body for two main aspects. One, to catch the food, so they have to move faster, and the second is to escape from the enemies. When the enemies, the larger organisms, chase them, they need to escape from them. In both these cases, the mollusca finds much difficulty, and therefore they developed a much harder, rather I can say calcareous in the sense made up of calcium carbonate exoskeleton, which was hollow in the sense to hide inside in case of danger, So these mollusca, they develop a covering on their body like this, hard, and which is hollow from inside, so they could go very easily inside. The whole body comes out, no doubt, that is the head, the body and the feet comes out from this hard exoskeleton. In search of food and movement, they move around, but whenever there is a danger, they easily take the body inside this hard structure. You can clearly understand we are talking about, the example is snail. But all the other activity, if you compare them with arthropoda, the nervous system is much more developed. The second thing is they also develop lungs like and kidney like organ. I mean, lungs like in मतलब lungs जैसा, kidney जैसा, मतलब what is the function of lungs? The lungs is a bag-like structure which holds the air we breathe in, and it allows our blood to capture the oxygen from that. That is the function of lungs, it is a reservoir of the air through which the blood can capture oxygen. So the mollusk also develops a cavity where they hold the air, and from there the oxygen is taken into the blood. So the cavity behaves like lungs. So we can say the kidney is a structure you all know. It is used to remove the waste materials from our body. And the mollusk also develops a structure. It's not a kidney at all, but it acts almost like kidney. So it's a much developed character that we find in case of mollusca. So mollusca, as compared to arthropoda, has much more development of visceral organs, internal organs. The brain is much more developed than arthropoda. But then the most important factor is there is this what you can say demotion of character actually, from a better moving organisms to a lesser moving organism. The fifth point that we can very clearly discuss is they possess or continues to have a open circulatory system as arthropoda. Arthropoda had the open circulatory system. You all know open circulatory system means the body fluid which helps in the transport process is filled in the body cavity. That is called open circulatory system. All the organs bathe, they take bath in the body fluid, which is generally called as lymph and not a blood, because it is not red in color. In case of closed circulatory system, the blood is red, has hemoglobin, and generally the blood flows in closed tubes called arteries and veins. That is what is absent in mollusca. So this is the next higher group as compared to arthropoda. There are certain characters which they continue to have, and there are certain internal body structures that is much more developed, with one minor quality, we can say negative quality, that the movement has gone down. Movement, the speed, the velocity with which they move has decreased as compared to arthropoda. So from mollusca then up to mollusca, you can see in arthropoda the exoskeleton develops, and the exoskeleton becomes much more harder in the mollusca. But still there is only exoskeleton and there is no endoskeleton. Then comes the group called Echinodermata. The name of this group, Echinodermata, very clearly is because of the two terms called echinus, which means spines, and dermis, which means the skin. So very clearly we call all these organisms, the organisms in this group are spiny skinned. Means there is spines in the skin. If you touch these animals, if you hold the animal in your hand and move your hand over the skin, you will feel that pricking sensation. जैसे लगता है कि कांटा चुभ रहा है. So the skin is spiny, and that is how the name of the group came as Echinodermata. The second very important thing is all the internal organ and organ system are poorly developed. Now once again, it's a very controversial topic. Why Echinodermata is kept at the highest group? We are talking about the development of Porifera into Coelenterata. I am writing in short form. We have already studied this. Coelenterata into Helminthes, into Annelida, into Arthropoda, into Mollusca, and then the Echinodermata. After which we are going to see the chordates. The chordates clear cut has endoskeleton. And up to this we very clearly know that there is no endoskeleton. So it has got to be a progression, but then no endoskeleton. At Arthropoda we studied the development of an exoskeleton, which was found in mollusca also. So there is a slow progress, from cellular level of organization to tissue level organization to development of organs. Progress hota chala ja raha hai. And suddenly we keep Echinodermata at the highest group of invertebrate by saying that the internal organs and organ systems are poorly developed. So the controversial topic is why then Echinodermata is kept at the highest level. Just because you understand this discussion in between, which has nothing to do with the character of Echinodermata, but बता रहे थे आपको कि Echinodermata highest group पर रखा गया है, although they have very poorly developed characters. Why? What is the reason behind this? It is because the Echinodermata is believed to be the transition point between invertebrates and chordates. मतलब organisms having no endoskeleton to organisms having endoskeleton. And Echinodermata is kept between this. You can say this total is invertebrata, chordata, उसके बीच में इसको डाला गया because it shows a step where there is a change from exoskeleton to endoskeleton. जो मैंने बताया spiny skin. If you see Echinodermata like this, suppose this is the external skin, so there are spines on the skin. But when you observe the development of spines, you will be shocked to see that a part of the spine is outside the body, that is called as exoskeleton. But the spine is inserted inside the body, so that part of the spine inside the body will be called as endoskeleton. मतलब Echinodermata has both exo and endoskeleton. So clear cut from organisms having exoskeleton, two organisms having endoskeleton. In between there is an organism which has exo and endo both. So that shows a change from exo to endo. The exoskeleton is slowly trying to get inside the body to develop into endoskeleton, and then endoskeleton develops. So just because of this one character, very important character, the Echinodermata has all very poor characters, almost like the primitive group of invertebrates. But it has been kept at the highest group of invertebrates just because of this factor, that it shows a transition from invertebrate to chordates, the development of endoskeleton from exoskeleton. I hope you understood that. And the fourth one is the movement, a locomotion, as you say. Locomotion is due to water driven tube feet system. It's a very heavy name given, but although it's a very poor character, if you observe the starfish having these 5 arms, this is the mouth through which water enters in, and here there are spines on the skin, no doubt. That is why it is a Echinodermata. But you will see there are channels, and just as 2 rows on both sides of the channels, there are tube feet. These feet are like balloon-like structures. You know, when they are under normal condition, it is almost in a punctured state. Like you have seen a elongated balloon. If you remove air from that, the balloon gets punctured. That is how it has no strength at all to carry the weight of the body. It is like that. But the moment water enters inside and the water is driven into these feet, which is tube-like structures, tube feet. When water is forced into these tube feet, it gets swollen, becomes a bit harder, and that is used to run. If you watch on the beaches, sea beaches, if you watch starfish, if there is no water on the sand, the starfish is just like that. It has no movement at all. It is almost like a non-living thing. But the moment the waves come and the water comes and water is pumped into the mouth, sucked into the mouth, and water is given to the 2 feet, it starts moving suddenly. Only because the water is pumped into the feet, which is tube-like, the tube swells due to the entry of water, gets some strength, and that is used to run. So that process is called as water-driven tube feet system used for locomotion. So you can see it's a very poor quality, but still I have already discussed why they are kept at the highest group of invertebrates. So that's all about invertebrates. And this invertebrate, once, as you saw in Echinodermata, started development of endoskeleton, that is, the hard structures started moving inside the body. These hard structures or spiny structures of skeleton, they joined together inside the body, and the organisms developed a hard rod-like structure as endoskeleton to support the body, which is also called as notochord. These organisms are kept in a group called protochordates. ये क्लासिफिकेशन आपको दिया हुआ है, वहाँ से आप देख लेंगे. The protochordates developed from Echinodermata, the highest group of invertebrata. It's an evolutionary process. The second most important character is respiration in these organisms occurs by gills. They also develop a dorsal in the sense on the back side, nerve cord, which runs throughout the body. For the nervous system, you can see that is the process. For movement, they develop a post-anal fin. If you see these structures, they also have a body is differentiated, no doubt. Body is differentiated into very clear-cut zones like head, there is a collar, then there is the viscera, the body parts, and then the post-anal fin. If you see these structures, it is there in your NCERT book, you clearly follow that. There is a head, and from the head there is a collar, and then the body structures, the internal organs are there, and at the end there is a flat anal fin-like structure which helps in the movement. You can see the example given that is called as balanoglossus. The diagram is not more important, and it is just a rough diagram, don't go with that. But the head is there with sense organs. There is a collar which supports, जो आपने आर्थ्रोपोडा में देखा था हेड के बाद thorax आता है, वैसे ही एक स्ट्रक्चर है. And then but because these organisms are aquatic, so they need a post-anal fin. Of course, the body is streamlined. So there are these structures developing, in the organisms, which slowly becoming streamlined. Respiration started with gills, and the post-anal fins helping in movement. So you can clearly see these are the animals which go into they are mostly aquatic. But the protochordates, this whole protochordate is classified into 3 categories. That is basically on the basis of the presence of notochord. If you see the whole body, dorsal body part, if I am showing a rough diagram again, there are certain protochords which develop the notochord only in the tail region, this is suppose head, mid part and the last part called tail part. So those which have notochord only in the tail regions, they were called as urochordata. And those organisms which had notochord only in the head region, the heart structure, they are called as cephalochordata. All the other characters are there. All of them have gills, all of them have nerve cord. They are all trichloblastic, coelomate, that is no problem at all. But there are certain organisms which have notochord in the middle part of the body, they are called as hemichordata. A Darwin's theory is there, the struggle for existence, competition among the organisms, and survival of the fittest. During competition, you can see very clearly what the animals need. They need flexibility of their head for catching the food, which is left or right or bottom or top. They need to move their head, and the fins for movement is always at the back portion, last part. So they need flexibility of the tail region too for movement here and there. But what happened? Urochordata had a hard rod-like structure at the tail region, so the movement was not very swift. The cephalochordata has a hard structure at the head. The head was not flexible at all. But as far as hemichordata is concerned, the notochord is at the central part of the body. The body had strength plus that hard structure is absent in head as well as tail region. So movement of head was possible, movement of fins was possible. So catching food was not a problem. The movement of the body here and there using the fins was also not a problem. So hemichordata was the most successful one. The most successful organism as compared to protochordates were hemichordates, and therefore they evolved into what we today know as the fishes, the vertebrates, only when the notochord was replaced. Notochord was replaced by what is called as the backbone or vertebral column. ये धीरे धीरे आपको समझ में आएगा जब आप 10th में आ जाएंगे कि धीरे धीरे होता क्या है कि there is change in characters of organisms as the characters pass from one generation to the next generation. There occurs variations. Characters में बदलाव आते जाते हैं और ये जो बदलाव आता है उसी से कुछ नए characters develop होते हैं. That is how notochord changed into backbone, vertebral column, which is much more advanced character. So characters keep changing every generation. एक छोटा सा बात अगर आपको कह दे कि no young one, no child is exactly like the father or mother. They are having different qualities. That is called variation. So characters keep changing generation after generation. हाँ ये हो सकता है कि the variation, the changes may be negative or positive. So negative variations are poor characters, they are slowly removed from the nature. And those characters which are better in the sense which helps the organism to survive in a better way, they are selected by the nature. ये आपको 10th में पढ़ाई हो जाएगा, तो ये आप समझ जाएंगे कि कैसे कोई कैरेक्टर रिजेक्ट हो जा रहा है, कोई कैरेक्टर सेलेक्ट हो जा रहा है. सो पुअर वेरिएशंस, ऐसे बदलाव होता है हर ऑर्गेनिज्म में. वो बदलाव जो एडवांटेज नहीं दे रहा है बल्कि डिसएडवांटेज दे रहा है, सच ऑर्गेनिजम्स डाई बिकॉज दे आर नॉट एबल टू compete with the others. And those which are better characters developing due to variation, they survive better, they produce the next generation, and the characters goes on getting refined generation after generation. Is that clear to you? So that is how the invertebrates have developed into protochordates, and the protochordates were of 3 categories, out of which 2 are almost extinct because they are not able to compete with the others. Hemichordata is the better one, so it has evolved slowly into a vertebrate called fish. So we are talking now about the development of the most advanced group of animal kingdom, that is vertebrates. The name vertebrate is just due to the development of a flexible supporting structure on the dorsal surface of the organism, that is called vertebral column. So vertebrates हैं तो बहुत, और उसमें भी वही है कि first vertebrate which has developed in this universe was fish, also called as Pisces, and that has slowly changed. अभी थोड़ी देर पहले मैं बताया, slowly changed into amphibians. Amphibians have changed into reptiles, and reptiles has changed into birds, and reptile has also changed into mammals. The mammals have not developed from birds. That is one thing you should remember. But these are the 5 categories which have developed. How development occurs, just now I have talked about it. Variations, positive variations being selected in nature. Positive means better qualities, and you can see the qualities getting refined when we compare all these today. What are the comparison between these group of vertebrates? As a very general study, they are very different from each other. One very simple thing that you know are the development of characters are mostly due to the habitats. The organisms develop characters by variations, no doubt. एक organism के 4-5 बच्चे हुए तो पांचों के कैरेक्टर अलग होते हैं, वेरिएशन होता है. तो इन पांचों में कौन रहेगा, कौन जिंदा बचेगा, कौन अगले जनरेशन तक जाएगा, कौन मारा जाएगा, it depends on the variations. Positive, better variation survives. And plus, how can you say a better variation? So better variation मतलब which is giving more chance to survive. Now fish has a aquatic habitat. ठीक है ना? अगर बात करें हम characters की, तो the first and foremost thing that you have studied in your junior classes is habitat and adaptation. Habitat and adaptation. So fish has an aquatic habitat. Amphibians, lives on both land and water. Of course, reptiles also are found on both land and water, if you see the examples, but they are mostly land-dwelling animals, so they are classified as terrestrial organisms. The birds have an aerial habitat. They spend most of their lifetime in air. And mammals belongs to both, it is aquatic, terrestrial, as well as aerial. But aerial is limited, these two are the most important characters. Now, as I said, when the organisms have selected a particular habitat, तो वेरिएशंस तो फिश में भी हो रहा है, वेरिएशन एम्फीबियन में भी हो रहा है, लेकिन जो पॉजिटिव वेरिएशन जिसको नेचर सेलेक्ट करता है वो हैबिटेट, जैसे पानी में रहने में जो कैरेक्टर मदद करेगा वो सेलेक्ट होगा फिश में, लैंड में रहने में जो कैरेक्टर मदद करेगा वो हो जाएगा सिलेक्शन रेप्टाइल्स में. अगर फिश के बच्चों में जमीन पर रहने वाले कैरेक्टर आ जाएंगे तब तो वो दैट विल बी पुअर क्वालिटी फॉर देम बिकॉज दे हैव टू लिव इन वाटर, दे हैव टू लिव इन वाटर. तो इस तरीके से the development of character also depends on habitat, and because of that most of the characters have got changed in this Changes, adaptations are mostly due to the habitats. So primary character which decides the change in character of all is the habitat. Then we will see the next character that is called as covering on the skin. If you observe this, you can clearly say which animals belong to which categories. There are scales found in fishes which are both cycloid and placoid scales. Now cycloid scales are circular in shape. You can see when you buy a fish, rohu, katla, on the skin you will find that flat circular shaped scales. They are called cycloid scales. And the scales you find on the body of sharks, if you see, they are spiny, needle shaped. So both type of scales are found in fishes. As far as amphibians are concerned, there is moist, soft skin, not much covering on the skin because the skin helps in the process of breathing also. The reptiles have a scaly, dry skin. In birds, it is covered with feathers, and the mammals have hairs on the skin. So ये भी एक कॉमन क्वालिटी उसे आप क्लियरली पता कर सकते हैं. कोई भी एनिमल आपको पता नहीं है, मान लो you observe the skin, if you find hairs on the skin, आप देखो कैटल को, cow, buffalo, dogs, cats, they have rabbits, they have all hairs on the skin, बाल होता है स्किन पर. तो वो एक बहुत कॉमन कैरेक्टर है. You can clearly say that it is mammal. अगर कहीं से भी feathers दिखता है तो that must go to the category of birds. ठीक है ना? The next is the locomotory structure. Locomotory structure. You clearly know in fish it is fins. As far as amphibians are concerned, it is fins in the larva of amphibia, but it is definitely the legs. अच्छा legs नहीं बोलेंगे, हम बोल देंगे साफ साफ four limbs and hind limbs. Those which have four legs, the first two legs are called as forelimbs, the back two legs are called hind limbs. So there are forelimbs and hind limbs in amphibians. The same thing in reptiles also, the forelimbs and hind limbs. As far as birds are concerned, the forelimbs have changed into wings and they have only hind limbs to walk, and for flying they use the forelimbs which has modified into wings. As far as mammals are concerned, they have legs clearly. We don't use limbs for that. There are mammals which walk on two legs. We are there. There are mammals which walk on four legs also. Four in the sense 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm not talking about F-O-R-E. Four legs, I'm talking about F-O-U-R. So that is the locomotory structures found in them. As far as respiration and breathing is concerned, so the fishes use gills. Fishes use gills. Here it is gills in larva. Some ऐसा भी नहीं है कि the larva always have fins. The larva has fins or may not have. But we are talking about locomotory structure, so we'll talk about the adults, forelimbs and hind limbs. But respiration में थोड़ा सा बहुत difference है, clear cut differences. The larva, amphibian में आप जानते हैं tadpole बोलते हैं. The tadpole has gills, but when you come to adults, they have lungs. They have the lungs in adults. So two clear-cut different structures are found. So we need to mention that. As far as reptiles, birds, and mammals are concerned, they all have lungs. They all have lungs. Clear? Talking about the main character that is called maintenance of body temperature. So the first three groups, fish, amphibian, reptiles, all three are, I will write it together, they are cold-blooded animals up to here, from here to here, and these two are called as warm-blooded animals. Now what do you mean by cold-blooded and warm-blooded animals? Cold-blooded animals are those animals which are not able to maintain their body temperature in changing environmental conditions. What I mean to say is that if winter comes, now there is winter and the temperature of the environment drops to 15 degree, 10 degree, 5 degrees, the temperature of these animals also drop according to the environment. गर्मी के दिनों में इनका बॉडी टेम्परेचर ज़्यादा होगा, ठंड के दिनों में इनका टेम्परेचर कम हो जाता है. Warm blooded animals maintain a perfect body temperature throughout the year. ठीक है ना? Like human beings. Winter है, summer है, rainy season है, whatever is the season, that doesn't matter. From January to December, our body temperature is 37 degrees Celsius. It is maintained. हाँ, गर्मी में टेम्परेचर जब बाहर ज़्यादा हो जाता है, उस टेम्परेचर में हमारा बॉडी, आवर बॉडी इज इन द एनवायरमेंट. अगर आपको गर्म जगह पर रखेंगे तो बॉडी विल एब्जॉर्ब द हीट, इज इट नॉट? सो व्हेन द टेम्परेचर राइजेस, आवर बॉडी टेम्परेचर आल्सो राइजेस. देन व्हाट आवर बॉडी डज, इट स्टार्ट्स स्वेटिंग. स्वेटिंग आप केमिस्ट्री में पढ़े हैं. स्वेटिंग से होता है क्या, पसीना आता है और वो एवापोरेट करता है. एवापोरेशन कॉजेस कूलिंग, तो आपका टेम्परेचर फिर डाउन होता है. ठंड के दिन में आपने देखा होगा आपका बदन कांपने लगता है. दैट इज मस्कुलर कॉन्ट्रैक्शन. व्हाई मसल्स कॉन्ट्रैक्ट? आपको अगर ठंड के दिनों में बदन सिहरता है, कांपता है, तो लोग घबरा जाते हैं. घबराने वाली बात नहीं, ये बॉडी का मैकेनिज्म है कि मसल्स को कॉन्ट्रैक्ट कराता है, रिलैक्स कराता है. उस कॉन्ट्रैक्शन रिलैक्सेशन से क्या होता है, हीट एनर्जी रिलीज होता है और उस हीट एनर्जी से आपका टेम्परेचर, बॉडी टेम्परेचर बढ़ता है, जो कि बाहर के कम टेम्परेचर में डाउन हो चुका है. तो बॉडी ऑलवेज स्ट्रगल्स, ट्राइज टू मेंटेन द बॉडी टेम्परेचर. Such animals are called as warm-blooded animals, and those which cannot maintain their body temperature. The body temperature fluctuates according to the environmental temperature. They are cold-blooded. और यही कारण है ना, the enzymes, the hormones in our body, any organism for that matter, they act at a particular temperature. When it comes to the lower temperature side, the enzymes, the hormones, the blood flow, the heartbeat, all reduces. At low temperature, they cannot act. और यही कारण है कि एक्सट्रीम ठंड जब आ जाता है 5 डिग्री 10 डिग्री में, यू विल सी द फिश, एम्फीबियन, रेप्टाइल्स. दे रेप्टाइल्स के बारे में मोस्टली बोला जाता है, या एम्फीबियंस के बारे में एक टर्म आता है हाइबरनेशन. बोलते हैं विंटर स्लीप, कि ठंड के दिनों में ये सोने चले जाते हैं. विंटर स्लीप, दे डोंट गो टू स्लीप इवन, दे आर फोर्स्ड टू रिमेन इनएक्टिव. फोर्स्ड हो जाते हैं. क्यों? बॉडी का टेम्परेचर इतना डाउन हो गया कि न मस्कुलर एक्टिविटी हो रहा है, न हार्ट बीट कर रहा है, न ब्लड फ्लो कर रहा है, एंजाइम हार्मोन कुछ भी काम नहीं कर रहा है. सो दे बिकम लेथार्जिक एंड दे आर फोर्स्ड टू स्टे एट वन प्लेस, हाइड देमसेल्व्स एट वन प्लेस. सो हाइबरनेशन इज, वो उनका शौक नहीं है, वो उनकी मजबूरी है, बिकॉज दे आर अनेबल टू मेंटेन देयर बॉडी टेम्परेचर. आई होप यू अंडरस्टूड दैट. सो दैट इज इट. एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट बात है, दैट इज कॉल्ड एज चेम्बर्स ऑफ हार्ट. Chambers of heart are the pockets in which blood gets filled up. You have studied the chambers of heart are, the upper chambers are called as auricles, which receives the blood from body parts, and the lower chambers are called as ventricles, which pumps the blood to the various body parts. So these animals, we have clearly seen that the fish is the lowest group of vertebrates. Mammals and birds are the highest group of vertebrates. You can clearly understand from here also. The fishes has only 2 chambers, that is 1 auricle and 1 ventricle. एक auricle, एक ventricle. The amphibians have 2 auricles and 1 ventricle. 2 auricle है, एक ventricle. We say they have 3 chambers. The mammals and the birds have 2 auricle and 2 ventricles. Same is true with mammals. 2 auricles. If you observe the heart, there are 2 auricles, 2 ventricles. So they both have 4 chambers. Amphibians have 3 chambers. What about reptiles? The reptiles have 2 clear-cut auricles, 2, a ventricle, 3, and the ventricle is half separated. So because it is almost a structure in between this and this, there is no separation, complete separation, half separation. So a character showing between 3 and 4. So we tend to say that reptiles have 3.5 chambers. There is just one reptile in this universe which has four-chambered heart, and that is called crocodile. Crocodile is a reptile having four chambers. Other than crocodile, all the reptiles have 3.5 chambers. So these are the various groups of vertebrates, very different from each other. The table will give you the characters also. अगर बोलता है what is the characteristic feature of the group Pisces? They are called classes of the phylum Vertebrates. The class fish is aquatic in nature. The skin is covered with cycloid or placoid scales. Their locomotive structure is fins. They swim in water. They are aquatic. The respiration is done by gills. They are cold-blooded animals. They have just two-chambered heart. Very clearly, you can easily give the characters. कुछ भी पूछता है आपको, bird का character पूछेगा तो आप वो भी बता दे सकते हैं from this table. और अगर differences पूछता है, what is the difference between amphibian and reptile? So that also you can very clearly say using this table that I have just now given you. So it's just a comparative structure. एक बात आप सब जानते हैं, development of young ones. तो fish, amphibians, reptiles and birds, they all lay eggs. They all lay eggs, and from the eggs the young ones develop. So they are called as oviparous animals. क्या बोलते हैं इसको? Oviparous. As far as mammals are concerned, they don't lay eggs. They directly give birth to young ones, so they are called as viviparous. So these are few terms that you can remember. मैं दो नाम और दे देता हूँ. The mammals clearly समझना are viviparous. But there are two mammals which are oviparous. Just दो मैमल ऐसे हैं जो oviparous है, जो egg lay करते हैं. I'm talking about just mammals, mind you. All mammals are viviparous, but you remember two mammals are there. That is called Echidna and Platypus. There are two important names you should remember. देखो, fish, amphibian, reptile, birds all are oviparous. Mammals are viviparous, but the exception. There are just two mammals in this universe called Echidna and Platypus. Are two mammals which also lay eggs. So this was the total chapter